Well, as far as debuts go, that's pretty much as good as it gets, doesn't it? We will get onto him in just a moment, but why don't we start with Spurs and whether or not that performance for you signified the beginning of José's reign at Spurs, or at least a corner turned, or not?
Well, it was a big win, but he just covered over the tracks. They were a million miles behind. It could have been 6 or 7-0. I mean, on any other day, it could have been. I mean, they rode their luck. I give them their credit. The players stuck to the game plan. They stuck to the game plan. They hung in there, and then they got their lucky breaks and a great goal. I mean, that's a great goal. I mean, as soon as the lad hits it, he's running away. He knows it's a goal. But no, I mean, if you can't sit there and say, oh, you know, Mourinho's, you know, he's doing great. He's done great. I mean, it was just an absolute runaround, in my opinion. You've only got to look at. I know the stats. It's 2-0, and that's the way it is, but. Nah, for me, I mean, it covered over the cracks. They're a million miles behind, a million miles. He was brought in to get in the top 4. That's a big result, to get in a chance of getting in the top 4. So,
well, that's it. It takes them a step closer, and it is actually a weekend where a lot of the other challengers for top 4 failed to make significant advances. Spurs did. For you, Eni, what did they do well in that game?
Well, I think they hung in there. As Merce said, I mean, Man City could have been 5-0 up. They had so many chances. I think it was like 19 attempts. Spurs only had 3. Obviously, they've taken their chances. I think Son is a big one as well. When they're missing Harry Kane, Son always steps up to the plate. He's done it season after season. Harry Kane's had sustained injuries. Son steps up and scores goals. But I think Mourinho's teams are always that kind of team that they defend well. They love defending. He sets them up to try and defend. But that's the first big win against a top 4 side. They've lost against Chelsea. They've lost against United. They've lost against Liverpool. It seems like Tottenham are Man City's bogey team. They seem to lose against them. So it was a lucky win. There's no getting away from that.
Eni, you mentioned the stats a minute ago and the difference in shots and that sort of stuff. Let's have a little look at it, because it is very significant, this. When Merce talks about the fact that Man City could have been 6-0 up, you know, look at these. I mean, the important ones to look at really are the attempts there. Tottenham with 3, Manchester City with 19. And also the touches in the opposition box. Spurs with 11 and Manchester City with 52. I mean, that's quite a significant difference, isn't it?
Yeah. Man City were dominant in all areas, but the problem I have with it is Man City have done that too many times this season now. For me, they did it at Anfield. I thought they played well at Anfield, and they were 2-0 down, and when Liverpool had only had 2 shots, and they dominated Wolves at home and lost 2-0. So Man City are having a real tough time at keeping clean sheets. You know, you can dominate the game all you want, you can be open, you can be expansive, you can create all these chances, but if you're going to concede nearly every time the opposition attack, you're going to have problems. And that's what they found. They've lost 6 games this season.
Is it worrying for Pep, that kind of form?
oh, very much so. The league's out. I mean, they're 22 points behind. I mean, you're talking...
It's ridiculous.
I sit there and I look and I think, he's fortunate, he gets away with it. And I say that in a way where he's got 22 internationals. He's got a player for 2 players for every position virtually. And to be 22 points behind... You know, and then Klopp goes, I might not be turning up for the Man United for the cup game, and everybody jumps on his back. He must be sitting there thinking, why is no one saying anything about Pep Guardiola? He's 22 points behind me.
He's also spent the most money. He's spent a lot of money. And I was quite surprised in the January window why they didn't go in for a centre-half. You've got midfielders playing at centre-half. That's been a position. John Stones looks like he's completely out of favour. So I don't... It looks like maybe that, you know, there seems to be sort of, well, it's over, and... you know, they're not really the City side that are really cutting edge that we're used to seeing.
They got it terribly wrong in the summer for me. You know, when Kompany, I don't know if they knew he was going to leave, but when Kompany left, you had to replace him. Otamendi's not good enough for me to play in a title-winning side regularly. Pep Guardiola can tell me in interviews that he's having John Stones and he's a fantastic defender, but I'm never going to believe him, because if he was that good, he'd be playing in his team. We'd be using him to help him win games and win titles. So the fact that you've had to move Fernandinho out of his position where he is the best in the league, he's the best defensive midfielder in the league, you have to move him to play centre-half where he's not as good as Kompany was. Then Laporte gets injured and you're playing Otamendi, who's not as good as Laporte. So that back 3 there that kept them so solid against counter-attacks is just nowhere near what it was last year.
But if you look at Pep Guardiola, Mascherano played centre-half at Barcelona. Martinez played sometimes centre-half at Bayern Munich. It doesn't. It's like I've got that much attacking player. I don't really have to be that solid at the back, and I think it's been found out this season. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they could play next week or in 2 weeks' time, and they could beat you 8-0, and they could beat you 7-0. They have got that in them, like they did at Villa Park. I just brushed them aside. But it's impossible for me, for them to be 22 points behind Liverpool. For how good Liverpool have been, you still wouldn't, if both teams played each other 10 times in the next 10 days, you wouldn't say no way would Liverpool win all 10 games. You'd probably sort of side with Man City on their day, which is strange.
It adds a lot of pressure as well if there wasn't already to the Champions League prospect about them trying to progress. And in the form that they're in, do you worry about them in the Champions League as well, Eni?
I do, because of that defensive bit. I think when you come up against European opposition, that's when the level is just much higher. The strikers are much more clinical. And I just think that is the final bit for Pep Guardiola now, winning the Champions League, and they don't look anywhere near it. If you're 22 points behind in your domestic league, you're probably not going to win the Champions League. And I think that's what Pep Guardiola ultimately was brought in to do at Man City. And everybody kind of tippy toes around it. It's Pep Guardiola is a genius. But it's not good enough, really. You can't spend all of that money, be 22 points behind your rival, and be so far off potentially winning the Champions League.
Has he almost been punished by the high standards that he sets himself and the teams that he manages?
Yeah, I think he'll always be judged at that level because of the career he's had, and he's won everything everywhere, hasn't he? So we're always going to judge him, and rightly so, because of the money he's spent and what he's got at his disposal. He should be expected to win things every year. I just think, like Merce says, when they're on it and they take their chances and they can brush people aside, so they're always going to be a threat in the Champions League. I don't think they can't win it. I think there's a possibility they can win it if they take their chances, and they always manage to find a good day when they play. But I just think teams now know that there's that weakness there. You know, they know that if we just hang in here and we get half a chance on the counter, there's a decent chance we're going to score.
Does that confidence that you're talking about, that other teams feel like they have now and they come up against Manchester City, do you think the players themselves are lacking that in their team?
I don't think teams have got confidence of going up and playing against Man City. I don't think you turn up at Man City or play them at home and think, oh, this is handy, Man City are coming. What I think, their Achilles heel is at the back, so you've got to have a go at them. You know you're going to get chances. You play against Liverpool, and you know against Liverpool you have to stay with them for 94 minutes. You have to stay with them. They can have a bad 20 minutes, Liverpool, and then the next 30 they can blow you away. That's not the case with Man City. Man City, teams are having a go at Man City now. Now when we go up to Real Madrid, who people I think are a bit lackadaisical, thinking, oh, it's only Real Madrid. It ain't the Real Madrid of old. They haven't got Ronaldo. They're top of the league. You know, this is a good team. And if Fernandinho plays centre-half over the two legs, who's the best holding midfield player, if not in the world, and he plays centre-half, I'd be shocked if they went through. And I mean be shocked. Because, you know, when they start getting up against people, like if they get through this and then they draw PSG and then you're playing against Mbappe, you know, and he's playing... No disrespect. Fernandinho was great the other day, but the longer the game went on and the movement was here and he was trying to gamble and trying to get in and trying to gamble and sort of try and help the team and push forward, he was getting pipped off of. And you
saw it in the Leicester game when Leicester went there. Vardy, as soon as Leicester got the ball, Vardy just pulled onto Fernandinho. Do you know what I mean? The opposition managers and opposition players aren't silly. They will find a weakness if there is one. And every time that Leicester won the ball back, Vardy just peeled onto Fernandinho, put it in behind him. I'll beat him in a race all day. I fancy my chances against him.
But it's like you said, Paul. I mean, it could have been 6-0 against Tottenham. You don't know what team are going to turn up. I mean, the date is the 26th of Feb, and that is the first leg against Real Madrid. You can almost see, actually, that they take their form into the Champions League that they have been missing the last couple of games, at least in the Premier League, and different teams turn up.
It is. It's hard to turn it on like a tap. You know, just to turn up and think, you know, we can be a bit open here and then next week we'll be more tighter. That's not in Pep Guardiola's DNA. You know, he likes to open the game like he's expansive. They pass and move and they keep themselves open. And for me, I would, against Real Madrid, I'd put Fernandinho and Rodri in front of Stones and whoever it has to be up to Mendy, because I think Laporte's injured. And I'd say you two stay there in front of these two, give them protection, because, you know, I played with one of the best about in Tony Adams, and I've played with people like that. You know, great defenders. But I don't care who you are. You could be Maldini and Baresi. If I'm running from here and I'm running at you at pace with the ball, I'm skipping past you 7 out of 10. So you need protection. It don't matter how good you are, you need protection. Tony Adams will sit here and tell you, you know, Lee Dixon or Nigel Winterburn, they weren't going anywhere. You know, they were in here. and you got protection. That's not being a bad defender, that's being a great defender. And that's the problem. They're too open, and it don't matter who you're at the back. When people will run at you, they'll skip past you 7 out of 10 times. I don't care who you are.